So joining me now is Hatem Dhiab, managing partner at Gerber Kawasaki. Hatem, good to see you this afternoon. Some pretty alarming revelations here. The stock falling in the wake of this, of course, no longer run by Travis Kalanick. But what's your reaction to this report?
Good to see you, Kristen. Thanks for having me back. It's a bombshell report for sure. I mean, we knew Uber was doing some really interesting things when under Travis. They were really pushing the limits and pushing the boundaries beyond really what we can expect from a business person. But this is really with the involvement of all the politicians and really more kind of negative news about getting drivers involved and put them in danger. It's really too much. I mean, I think it's really something that we can't allow.
So here's a question. I'm sure you probably do not own shares of Twitter, Hatem, at Gerber Kawasaki. I'd be curious if you're short shares of Uber. Is that the case?
We don't short stocks usually. We never liked the business. The business was never profitable. I think Uber is symptomatic of a Silicon Valley culture where they were just pushing a lot of money to kind of own the market without really having a product that's profitable. And till this day, I think 10 years after its founding, Uber still hasn't really figured out how to make real money. And as a result, I don't think it's a business that you want to own at this point.
So another question is the stock is down close to 5% today. But again, Kalanick has been out of this company, pushed out of this company years ago. And we all know why, because of aggressive behavior. I mean, this might not surprise some people that this was happening under Kalanick's watch based on all of the stories that we covered in the Uber files years ago. But why is it having a reaction today since he's been gone for years?
I'm not sure this is just directly to the report. I think the whole market is down, especially the growth side. But I think this is going to bring more lawsuits. It's unfortunate for Dara, who's the new CEO, to have to still deal with this because he's really been trying to clean up Kalanick's mess for a long time. But ultimately, this is going to bring some more lawsuits and some more negative news, which is ultimately going to impact the stock going forward.
What do you think this means for politicians? Any potential fallout there? Was former Vice President Joe Biden, now President, former Finance Minister, then French President Emmanuel Macron, who were engaged in some of these lobbying efforts?
I spoke to some contacts in France this morning, and Emmanuel Macron is really in trouble, or at least, I mean, he's lost his parliamentary majority last 2 weeks ago, so he's already been embattled, and this is really brings some negative news. There's already some lawsuits being filed against him, some investigation, but it's just super embarrassing for this to happen. He went against his government and helped really lobby for a company that was really breaking the law and just really don't want to be doing this. This happens in America a lot. We see a lot of these conversations happen between politicians and business, but it doesn't really happen as much in Europe. So it's super embarrassing for him.
Interesting. What other companies have you seen this happen to in the U.S.?
I mean, we can see what happened with WeWork. We can see what happened with Theranos. A lot of these companies, or at least these CEOs that in Silicon Valley, they think they are, basically have godlike powers, and can do whatever they want. I think the mentality of move fast and break things. Can think of Facebook too, with Zuckerberg, is really something that's hurting our society, and I think we need to bring that down, and politicians have to start regulating them.
Yeah. I also want to note this other factor here. I mean, the company apparently used this so-called kill switch on its computers to prevent authorities from investigating its business practices. I mean, Hatem, have you seen any sort of information that practices like these are still happening now under new leadership with Dara Khosrowshahi leading the helm at Uber?
I don't think any legit CEO will ever do something like this. There's a show, Super Pumped, I think, that really documented this after a book by I think Isaac about these whole tactics that Uber did, and these kill switches and so forth. I think they knew they were doing something wrong, right? They were trying to cover their tracks and trying to basically wipe their data because they knew if they get caught, this would be problematic. And the emails, the text messages kind of show that. And it's very unfortunate that actually nobody has been criminally charged from this. Travis Kalanick ended up with about $3 billion when he sold all of his shares. So basically a slap on the wrist and $3 billion.
Well, another question that I have is you mentioned grow at all costs, right? And you actually referenced Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, now Meta as well. We've been actually covering Meta today because Needham downgraded the stock to the equivalent of a sell, saying that their own business model, now focused on the metaverse, hasn't quite shown that it will actually be effective. COO for more than a decade, Sheryl Sandberg, that led the Facebook advertising business, having her own departure as we speak and will be gone here within the next few months with someone else taking over. What is your call on Meta right now? Is that a stock that you own and one that you're bullish on?
No, we got out of Meta or Facebook a few years back because we simply did not like it. I think what's happened right now is, if you're going into a slowdown, digital advertising or just advertising revenue is kind of the first thing to go, which is really about 100% of Meta's revenues right now. So you don't want to be owning this business going into a slowdown and so forth. Now, what Facebook is doing or Meta is doing is really rebranding and reimagining their business model. So and I'm bullish on the metaverse, but if they figure it out, I think it'll be very, very good, but it's going to take some years. And I frankly don't think they are the ones going to own the metaverse. I think they'll be a player. So for us, I think this is a tough challenge for them to be able to rebrand and change, the business in a way that's meaningful.
Interesting. Well, one other question that I have for you, Hatem, is we are starting to enter earnings season, of course, for the second quarter. Big questions as to whether or not the U.S. is in a recession, whether or not a recession ended at the end of June, and whether or not this slowdown does actually persist. So as someone who follows a lot of these technology companies closely, what are some key themes that you're expecting to see this earnings season, and what is actually some insight that would be beneficial from these companies for investments moving forward?
Well, I think obviously you don't know that you are in a recession unless you're in one. So it's really tough to predict. I think everyone obviously knows we're in a slowdown. I think everyone is going to be looking at guidance. What are companies doing? Are they, tightening their purses? Are they cutting staff, cutting expenses? There is no upside for CEOs at this point to be overly optimistic about the future. So we have to kind of understand how they're thinking about the next 6 to 12 months. But ultimately, things are tough, and the interest rates going up is really hurting both sentiment and also the consumer and the ability for them to spend. When you add that to higher inflation and really some strain on spending, I think it's going to be a tough earnings season.
All right, Hatem Dhiab, managing partner at Gerber Kawasaki. Hatem, thanks so much for coming on.